While white families are happily posing for their portraits, the neglected black boy nearby can only watch longingly, his eyes filled with an unmistakable sense of loneliness. Suddenly, the mother, ignoring her husband's look, beckons the big fellow over. The boy shuffles over awkwardly, and just as the camera shutter clicks, he gets his first real taste of what home feels like, marking a pivotal turning point in his destiny. This young man is O'Hara at just 16 years old. He stands over 6'6" and weighs a staggering 300 pounds. One of his feet is even larger than an average girl's head. However, fate had played a cruel joke on him. He was given the body of a beast, but the mental age of a 6-year-old. With an unknown father and a mother struggling as a drug addict, he was long abandoned, with his custody eventually falling to the state. In just a few years, he drifted through 11 different schools. He was placed in many foster homes, but no one ever truly cared for him. He was constantly met with complaints from foster parents who saw him only as a gluttonous burden. O'Hare knew all too well that he wasn't wanted, so he chose to walk away quietly. From then on, a cold 24-hour laundromat became his makeshift home. When hunger struck, he would scavenge for leftover popcorn in the gym. Those discarded scraps became his only means of survival. Who would have believed that this homeless, simple-minded giant would one day become one of the most celebrated superstars in America? What's even more remarkable is that this isn't fiction. It's the true story told in the movie The Blind Side. It was a frigid, rainy winter night. Wearing nothing but a thin t-shirt, O'Hare was shivering uncontrollably. By a stroke of luck, Anhui and her family happened to be driving by. It basically means a big guy with no brains. The father rolled down the window to ask, but upon hearing O'Hare say he was going to the gym and seeing the boy's dazed appearance, he didn't take it seriously and simply drove away. But the kind-hearted Leanne in the passenger seat couldn't let it go at this hour. Why would the gym still be open? She immediately told her husband to turn back and went up to O'Hare, asking him where he was really headed so late at night. Faced with Leanne's persistent questioning, O'Hare was nervous and overwhelmed. Having no choice, Leanne asked him directly if he had a place to sleep. O'Hare instinctively started to nod, about to lie, but under Leanne's intense gaze, he immediately shook his head honestly. Leanne glanced back at her husband with their years of unspoken understanding. The husband instantly understood his wife's decision, and just like that, a bewildered O'Hare got into the luxury car, following this family of strangers home. The moment he entered, O'Hare's eyes nearly popped out of his head. A mansion like this was something he hadn't even dared to dream of. But just like his previous experiences of being taken in, he was only meant to sleep on the sofa for the night. Even a sofa for someone who was often homeless. That's already incredible treatment. However, back in her room, Leanne found herself unable to sleep, feeling uneasy, fearing she'd let a wolf in the door. What if this big guy turned out to be a thief? The husband was more easygoing, calmly saying they'd find out in the morning. Early the next morning, Leanne went downstairs with a sense of trepidation, but the scene before her left her feeling deeply ashamed. The blanket on the sofa had been folded perfectly neat. O'Hare had already slipped away quietly. For fear of being a burden to this kind family, Leanne felt ashamed of her cynical assumptions and, without a second thought, she rushed out the door to go after Michael. Just in time for Thanksgiving, Lucy earnestly brings him back to celebrate the holiday with them. A massive feast was spread out across the dining table. While the family dove right in, Michael stood there completely at a loss. His sister kindly hands him a plate, but he only dares to take a small portion. He picks at the food others don't want and even secretly stashes a dinner roll. He's terrified that if he eats too much, he'll be kicked out once again. His cautiousness is heartbreaking to watch. When Lucy finally walks out of the kitchen, she finds that this outsider is the only one sitting properly at the table. This scene strikes a chord deep within Lucy. She looks at her own family, all slumped lazily on the sofa. Their table manners were as bad as they could be. Lucy's temper flares up. She shuts off the TV immediately, ordering everyone to the table so they can have a proper holiday meal. In this warm atmosphere, they all join hands to say grace. The daughter reaches out to Michael while the son gives him an encouraging wink. Only then does Michael feel safe enough to reach out with his large, calloused hands. In this way, he experiences the first real Thanksgiving of his life. For once, he feels it's good to be alive, and for the first time, he is treated with dignity. After the meal, Lucy decides to take Michael to buy some winter clothes, but he repeatedly refuses her offer. Seeing his guarded and distant demeanor, Lucy's fiery temper flares up again. She slams on the brakes, pulls over, and demands to know what's going on. Who was in charge of you before this? When he remains silent, Lucy grows even more anxious.
Tell me just one thing I should know about you. Just one. Oh no, I don't like being called Big Mike's. Big.
Relieved to see Michael finally opening up, Leanne nodded with a smile. Though he had nothing he still possessed a sense of quiet pride, knowing how to protect his own dignity. Next, they drove to the slums back to where Michael's biological mother lived. Michael wanted to grab what few clothes he had left, but as Lei-Anne prepared to get out, he held the door shut and locked it. This squalid neighborhood was rife with violence and danger. He didn't want her to hear the profanity or let those thugs lay a hand on her. Michael walked alone to the place he once called home, only to find an eviction notice sealed on the door. It seemed his drug-addicted mother had been kicked out once again. When his mother was here, this was home. Now, even that last shred of belonging was gone. He could only hide in a corner and quietly wipe away his tears after all these years. He had long ago learned to bottle up his suffering. Moments later, he pretended as if nothing had happened. When he returned, the perceptive Lei-Anne saw right through his brave face. Being wise, she didn't say a word, and instead drove him straight to a clothing store, saying the exorbitant prices. The considerate Michael kept saying he didn't like anything, finally choosing only a single item from the clearance rack. His selflessness was truly heartbreaking to witness. That evening, Lei-Anne asked Michael if he'd like to stay with them permanently. Upon hearing his yes, Lei-Anne smiled warmly. The next day, she prepared a room for him and even bought a custom-sized bed large enough to fit his massive frame.
It's mine. Yes, sir.
I've never had one before. What a room to yourself. This simple revelation completely shattered Lei-Anne's composure. She retreated to the next room, tears flowing uncontrollably, unable to calm her heart for a long time. It's hard to imagine the kind of shattered childhood a child must have endured, to have never once had a bed of his own. After careful consideration, Lei-Anne decided to adopt O'Hare to give this child a legal place in the family. However, the news of a wealthy white woman adopting a black boy from the project spout soon spread like wildfire through high society. The socialites' gossip was everywhere, mocking Lei-Anne with snide remarks. They said their family would be eaten out of house and home by this big guy sooner or later. Most spitefully, one of them even asked Lei-Anne, "Your daughter is so beautiful. Aren't you afraid of what this black boy might do to her?" Lei-Anne couldn't stand the insult. After calling them horrible, she stormed off in disgust. Though she was still fuming upon returning home, Lei-Anne still took the time to ask for her daughter's thoughts. The daughter didn't refuse right away, but her face was clouded with unease, as she had already been facing ridicule and judgmental stares at school because of him. It wasn't until the next day, when she saw O'Hare gently pushing children on the swings, that she realized this giant of a man had a kind and sensitive heart, someone who truly deserved to be treated with kindness. In the library, O'Hare tried to keep his distance to avoid gossip, deliberately staying far away so as not to cause trouble for his sister. Zaying the judgmental glares around her, she felt her mother's fierce protective spirit rising, and suddenly realized that family is someone you stand up for. Without a word, she stood up and sat right next to O'Hare in front of everyone. This gesture left O'Hare both surprised and deeply moved. "Who's looking at me like that? I mean we studied together at home." Actually, O'Hare's admission to this elite school was only possible because a football coach pulled some strings. The first time the coach saw Michael on the basketball court, the kid was built like a bear, yet he moved with the agility of a rabbit. He was a total natural. He was born for football. The coach made the call right then and there, granting him a special admission. However, as soon as training began, the coach was flabbergasted. The kid just couldn't process it. The playbook was like a foreign language to him. Football is a contact sport, yet he wouldn't intentionally hit anyone. He'd just carry his opponents away on his shoulders, driving the coach up the wall. The raw aggression you'd expect from the slums was nowhere to be found. Mika was like a gentle lamb, never fighting back or even talking back. At this critical juncture, his little brother SJ stepped up. Using spice jars, he laid them out on the dining table to explain tactics and even designed a grueling training regimen for Michael, covering everything from stamina to strength and speed. Show even acted as a human weight, having Michael lift him for practice. These two were really quite a pair. One day, Michael suddenly told Lei-Anne that he wanted to get a driver's license. Lei-Anne was puzzled. He didn't even have a car, so why get a license? Something to carry with my name on it. It broke Lei-Anne's heart to hear that. She realized that providing food and shelter simply wasn't enough. She needed to give Michael a legitimate identity. The next day, Lei-Anne rushed to start the formal adoption process. The records in the file once again stung her to the core. Michael's biological mother was an addict who had over a dozen children, all of whom were given away. Michael was forcibly taken at age 7 with custody transferred to the state. Adopting him didn't even require notifying his biological mother. But Lei-Anne wanted to do things right and decided to meet her anyway. What she found was a woman completely broken and worn down. Upon hearing her son was adopted by a kind family, without asking the government for a penny, Michael's mother's eyes instantly welled up with tears. She knew her son was blessed to have met such wonderful people. She told Lei-Anne that Michael had always been a runner, Yet he was her most cherished and most beloved son. No matter where he was sent or who took him in, he would always find his way back to her, seeing him finally find a good home. Her heart was filled with mixed emotions. As a mother herself, Lei An understood this feeling all too well. Back home, Lei An called a family meeting and formally asked Michael if he would like to officially become part of the family. Mikhail looked at his sister and then his brother with a look of pure bewilderment. And just like that, Michael officially became a member of the family. Soon after, Michael finally obtained his driver's license, giving him a true sense of identity and belonging. But the best part was yet to come. His father surprised him with a grand giftie, an incredibly cool-looking pickup truck. Joe was so excited that he insisted on a joyride, and the two were having a blast in the car, singing and grooving along. However, the joy was short-lived as they collided head-on with a truck. When Lei An arrived at the scene, her knees buckled in terror. The front of the pickup was completely totaled, but miraculously, though Shay was bleeding, he had only sustained minor scratches. The police were stunned with the airbag deploying at 200 kilometers per hour. The boy should have been severely injured or killed, yet he walked away with barely a scratch. It was nothing short of a miracle. As Lei An went to comfort Michael, she noticed his arm was covered in bruises. It wasn't a miracle at all. At the moment of impact, Michael had used his arm to stop the airbag's force, absorbing the entire blow to protect his brother. At first, Lei An couldn't fathom how Michael had reacted so quickly. It wasn't until she saw the psychological report from the teacher that she finally understood. O'Hare might lack in other areas, but his protective instinct was off the charts. Protecting his family was hardwired into his very soul. This was undoubtedly the shining light of his humanity and his greatest talent. But on the football field, this was initially perceived as a weakness. During practice, O'Hare still hesitated to hit anyone, fearing he might hurt them. Lei An was fuming on the sidelines and rushed onto the field to confront O'Hare. She pointed to his teammates and told O'Hare to protect them as if they were his own family. In this way, Lei An used the concept of family to finally reach him. She had finally unlocked Michael's true potential. Instantly, O'Hare transformed from a gentle lamb into an awakened beast. He used his massive physique to build an impenetrable wall. No opponent could breach his line. No one was going to touch his family, not on his watch. Following O'Hare's awakening, they headed into the official season. Facing his first big game, O'Hare was still a bit nervous and shaky. This gave the opponent's No. 66 a chance to repeatedly break through the line. He kept talking trash, calling O'Hare a retard on the field. He even threatened to take Michael out of the game. Joe was furious in the stands, but Lei An remained surprisingly calm. The game grew more intense and No. 66's play got even dirtier. The deficit widened, and it looked like they were going to lose. At this critical moment, O'Hare was knocked to the ground. No. 66 took a cheap shot and kicked him in the head. The coach absolutely lost it. He stormed out to protest, but ended up getting penalized himself. Now, it was personal. Coach was ready to throw down, but O'Hare held him back firmly. "No worry, coach, I got you with." He headed back onto the field. O'Hare's gaze shifted. He finally understood Lei An's words. His teammates were the family he had to protect. In that moment, he awakened once more like a beast unleashed from its cage. At the whistle, he snatched up No. 66 and drove him back like a human bulldozer. The coach screamed until he was hoarse. The stunned crowd rose to their feet in cheers. Even after his teammates scored, O'Hare didn't stop. He drove the poor guy all the way past the sidelines and into the perimeter fence, leaving him sprawling flat on his back. This was finally some well-deserved payback for Lei An. The rest of the game was essentially a one-man show by O'Hare. With one powerful block after another, he sent anyone in his way flying. No. 66 was literally reduced to tears and left the field in a total breakdown. Unsurprisingly, O'Hare led his team to a resounding victory. Joe spent the night sending out highlight reels to top universities across the country. When those world-class coaches saw O'Hare's raw potential, their jaws collectively dropped to the floor. By the next day, elite coaches were practically banging down their door. All of them wanted a look at this rare talent. They even brought in top prospects to test O'Hare in drills. At the whistle, it took less than a second for O'Hare to pancake his powerful opponent. The coaches were wide-eyed at such a dominant performance. They scrambled to call their schools to secure a scholarship for him. He'd be admitted as long as he could pull his grades up to passing. But Michael's academics were his Achilles heel, so Lei An hired a private tutor for intensive help. Even Sean stepped in to help with the tutoring himself. Finally, through the family's combined efforts, Michael managed to make the grade. Facing a flood of offers from prestigious schools, Michael followed his family's lead. He chose his parents' alma mater, Ole Miss. But then, an investigator from the NCEA showed up at their door. The investigator suspected the two Ohis had ulterior motives for adopting Michael, believing they only wanted to funnel talent to their alma mater. The investigator's words were vicious, telling Michael that his tutor and his adoptive parents were all Miss alumni. They were even major boosters It was all a calculated setup, and he was just a pawn in their game. They only care about their own interests. No one cares where you actually want to go. These words cut deep. Was all the kindness they showed him just an act? Mikhail was devastated and confronted Leanne in a rage.
All along, you wanted me to go to Ole Miss.
Of course, I did.
Why did you do this for me? What? Everything? Or was it for me? Would you have even helped me if I didn't play football? Was this the only reason you wanted me? Michael, that's just what she thinks. Is she right, Michael, honey? I need you to just listen to me. All right. Michael wouldn't listen to any explanation, and he slammed the door and walked out.
That night, Leanne was also consumed by self-doubt. Asking her husband if she had really done something wrong, her husband told her that as long as her conscience was clear, it was fine. But she couldn't let it go, feeling that she had been too controlling and had overstepped in managing Michael's life. Meanwhile, dejected Michael returned to the housing project zoo, where the thugs were still talking trash, even daring to make crude remarks about Leanne and her daughter, even threatening to harass them. This really crossed the line for Michael, even with guns involved. He didn't back down. In no time, he knocked all the thugs to the ground. At that moment, he realized that Leanne's family had long become an inseparable part of his life. The next day, Leanne went to find Michael all by herself, facing threats from the gang leader. This lady showed a side fiercer than anyone else.
No, you hear me, bitch. You threaten my son. You threaten me? You? So much as cross into downtown. You will be sorry. I'm in a prayer group with the DA. I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm always packing her words, left the thugs speechless and intimidated. They could only shut their mouths.
Right then, the phone rang. Mika, Mom. That word Mom made Leanne's heart tremble. They finally sat down for a heart-to-heart. Leanne asked the question weighing on her mind after growing up in such a chaotic environment. How could he still remain so kind in such a muddy pit? How did he manage to stay untainted?
My mom would tell me to close my eyes. She was trying to keep me from seeing the drugs or other bad things. And when she was finished and the bad things were over, she'd say, now, when I count 2, 3, you open your eyes. The past is gone. This is a good place. And it's all gonna be okay. It was that drug-addicted mother who had protected his kindness with these lies.
Leanne sincerely apologized to Michael and told him he could go to any college he liked. Even if it was their rival school, the whole family would support him. Michael joked, what if I wanted to flip burgers or be a thug? Mikhail gave a broad smile. Later, Michael went back to the investigator with his answer. Why did I choose Ole Miss Bear? Because that's where my family goes to school, and I want to be just like them. The investigator smiled. It was the perfect answer. Before long, it was move-in day. Leanne kept a stiff upper lip. Like any mother saying goodbye, she was heartbroken inside, but she had to act like everything was fine. After her final instructions, she rushed back to the car, afraid she'd burst into tears. But Michael saw right through her facade. He knocked on the window and told Leanne he wanted a proper hug. In that moment, Leanne finally let it all out. She stepped out and gave her son a warm, long-awaited embrace. This hug was a long time coming. Though not related by blood, this mother and son shared the most profound bond in the world. And that is where our story concludes. Based on a true story, homeless orphan turned football legend Michael O'Hare has worked a miracle. Some say he was lucky to find such a wonderful family, but in many ways Leanne was just as lucky. Michael filled a void in their home, making their perfect family truly whole. It wasn't about one saving the other. It was the mutual redemption of two souls. Michael had the strongest physique, but the most vulnerable blind side. The Tuohy family became his shield. We can't choose our origins, but love and kindness are the forces that rewrite destiny. So many people love this movie because it portrays an ideal Bond, one that doesn't care about the past, asks for nothing in return, and says I love you simply because you are you. Though most of us may never possess the Tuohys as well, may not all adopt a child, but we can at least learn from her attitude when facing those who are caught in the vulnerabilities and blind sides of life. Offer less indifferent judgment and more warm kindness. Even if it's just a smile, a patient word of direction, or helping someone out of an embarrassing moment, because you never know if the tiny glimmer you unintentionally share will become a torch that illuminates someone else's dark life. A top review on Dubin struck me: as long as you are willing to look back and see someone waiting for you, then that is home. May every lonely soul find a harbor of their own, and may everyone with the strength to do so become a guardian in the lives of others.